Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roche Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Michigan basketball fans, you got what you have been asking for. Juwan Howard is no longer the basketball coach of the Michigan Wolverines. He has been fired after 5 seasons. It started out well with his tenure, but after John Beilein's players left for the NBA or graduated, things just went downhill. And a lot of Michigan basketball fans, even though Juwan Howard is a program great, one of the best basketball players in Michigan history, coming back to coach his alma mater, Michigan fans just didn't want to see him coach the team anymore because they were absolutely abysmal. As you can see, he started out very well, like I said before. He went 19-12 and 10-10 in his first season, and the postseason got canceled due to the pandemic. But Michigan was a borderline tournament team that season. And then the next year, they went 23-5 and 14-3 in the Big Ten, and they were first in the Big Ten standings and went all the way to the Elite Eight. But that's when they had Isaiah Livers and Jordan Poole and Xavier Simpson. That team was basically built from the ground up by John Beilein, the former Michigan head coach, who had so much success. And I'm not saying Juwan Howard deserved no credit at all, but still, Juwan Howard was not the main reason that those teams were good. Then the season after that, you saw a decline. They went 19-15 and 11-9 in the Big Ten. They did make the Sweet 16, which made up for a pretty lackluster year of barely making the tournament, but that team wasn't all that great. And then last year, they went 18-16 and 11-9 in the Big Ten, and they only made the NIT, and that's with Hunter Dickinson, one of the best bigs in college basketball, and they still were not a very good team. And then this past season, 8-24 and 3-17 in Big Ten play. They finished last by far in the Big Ten standings. They were an absolutely anemic basketball team. Had some talent too. Doug McDaniel was a pretty good point guard, even though he did get in trouble for academics, so he didn't get to play all season. Olivier Nkamhoua was a pretty good transfer addition from Tennessee, but unfortunately for the Wolverines, it did not amount to much, and Juwan Howard is now being let go, and he had an 87-72 record, and he was 49-48 in the Big Ten in his 5-year tenure. And if it wasn't for the nice start he had with John Beilein's players, his record would have been a whole lot worse. And the thing that's so frustrating about the Juwan Howard tenure at Michigan is because I do not like seeing any coach get fired, and especially a guy that is at his alma mater. Guys like Patrick Ewing or Kenny Payne or Chris Mullins, you want those guys to succeed, but most of the time it doesn't work out. And Juwan Howard was given plenty of chances to redeem himself at the Michigan Wolverines. That's why he got 5 seasons. And after he hit the Wisconsin assistant coach a couple years ago, for a lot of coaches, that would have been an instant death sentence, that he would have been fired, that he would have gotten the pink slip. But Juwan Howard was still retained. He was not fired. He was just suspended for a few games. But again, most coaches would not have been kept after an incident like that. We know at Indiana with Bob Knight, he got fired after he hit a student. I know that's a little bit different than hitting an assistant coach during a game, but still, that was not a good look for Juwan Howard. And then there's people, including reporters, saying that Juwan Howard was fired for different reasons. Has absolutely nothing to do with anything but the fact that Juwan Howard did not win. You can't talk about anything else. Michigan didn't want to fire him. The AD at the Michigan Wolverines, Ward Manuel, he even said, even as recently as a couple weeks ago, that he wanted to work with Juwan Howard and be able to return Michigan basketball to greatness. But obviously he changed his mind because even he realized, probably with a lot of outside pressure with the fans and probably people in the Michigan administration, that this was not going to be able to be turned around, that Juwan Howard was going to continue to lose no matter what. He didn't have his son coming into the program anymore in Jet Howard. He didn't have any momentum in recruiting. He wasn't going to be able to recruit the type of players that he was earlier in his tenure, because once you start to lose and you're a terrible basketball team, you're not going to be able to get high-level players to want to come to your program. This is what I said on Twitter. AD Ward Manuel made the right decision. Juwan Howard needed to be fired for Michigan basketball to possibly become relevant again, and they are a program that has had success in the past. They won a national title in 1989. They've been a runner-up for the national championship tons of times, made a lot of Final Fours and Elite Eights, and they have tons of NCAA tournament appearances. No, they're not a program like Indiana or Duke or North Carolina, but still, Michigan is a very solid basketball program with a lot of history, and even though they do take a back seat to Michigan football, the fans do want Michigan basketball to win as well. And unfortunately, even though you had to fire a program great, Juwan Howard needed to go, not for any other reason other than the fact that he was just losing way too much. And you could also throw in the fact that he did hit the Wisconsin assistant a couple years ago, and a lot of people said that within the Michigan program, there was possibly a bad culture problem. I don't want to spread rumors, but right there, as you can see a report, Michigan's Juwan Howard accused of culture of fear. Again, I'm not spreading rumors, but that's just what's being thrown around. Plus, Juwan Howard has had some health problems recently. He missed some of the first few games of this season. It just all in all would make sense for Juwan Howard to move on. He is not the right person to lead Michigan basketball right now, and it's very unfortunate, but it is what it is. For Wolverines coaching candidates, people to replace Juwan Howard as the Michigan head basketball coach, Nate Oats is a candidate. If Michigan can somehow get Nate Oats to be the next head basketball coach of the Michigan Wolverines, that would be absolutely huge because Nate Oats is doing very well at Alabama. Yes, he does rely heavily on the transfer portal, and sometimes his teams kind of fade out in March Madness, and he kind of has way too much of an emphasis on a run and gun type of offense, so their defense kind of suffers. But Nate Oats, he has coached in Michigan before at a high school for over a decade, so Nate Oats is a possible candidate for Michigan, and if the Wolverines can somehow get Nate Oats, I would definitely think that he would be able to turn Michigan basketball around. Another candidate is Niko Medved from Colorado State. He is a guy that's originally from the Midwest, and he's had a lot of success at Colorado State. He wouldn't be as big of a splash hire as Nate Oats, but it definitely is a possibility. TJ Otzelberger at Iowa State. He's a guy that I'm surprised isn't on more people's hot list for more teams because he has done a fantastic job at Iowa State. He didn't even win that much at UNLV, but then he goes to Iowa State and he just blows it out of the water. Yes, he uses the transfer portal a lot, but it has worked out so far for him. And I do think because he is familiar with the Midwest area, he would be a pretty solid fit at Michigan. I would prefer Nate Oats to TJ Otzelberger because Nate Oats has had more sustained success. We have to see if TJ Otzelberger can keep this up, but it would not be a bad hire for the Michigan Wolverines. Dusty May's on the list. He's literally on every single list. Ohio State, West Virginia, Louisville. Now you've got Michigan having him on the list. Oklahoma State has even had Dusty May on the list. I don't think he would go to Michigan. I still think Dusty May would either go to Louisville or Ohio State or even stay at Florida Atlantic, but Dusty May wouldn't be a bad option either for Michigan if he did consider the job. John Beilein's on the list, but I don't see John Beilein returning to college basketball. With NIL now in the transfer portal, he's over 70 years old. He already had a lot of success at Michigan. Why tarnish it by possibly returning and not being able to build Michigan back to greatness? That really wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. But those are the coaching candidates for Michigan basketball. I think that the Wolverines, even though they're really struggling right now in this era of the transfer portal and NIL, things can be turned around very quickly. And I do think Michigan, if they hire the right coach, whether it is Nate Oats or Niko Medved or TJ Otzelberger, that those guys would be able to have a shot of turning Michigan basketball around. They've had a history and they have had a lot of success, but unfortunately for Michigan, Juwan Howard just wasn't the right guy, and they absolutely made the right decision to fire him. They need to move on and make sure they hire the right guy to get Michigan basketball back to relevancy. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below if you are so happy that Juwan Howard has been fired by the Michigan Wolverines, and who is your top coaching candidate to replace Juwan Howard as the Michigan Wolverines basketball coach. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.